Thank you all for being here early this morning. It's good to see you all, awake and buzzing. Just thought I'd, introduce some of the guys here today and just kind of kick things off. So we've got first on the panel today Nick Samios, our principal of Hermes. Maximilian, he's one of my colleagues and best mates. Bruce Connors, he's an industrial, he's head of industrial at Pickles and he's one of the directors. And infamous or famous.
It'd be interesting. So yeah, you introduced me.
Marcus Petrovic, king of restructuring. Today's topic is refinance, restructure, and run the auction. And just another notable mention is Catherine over there on our GM. So yeah, I just want to thank you, and I'll let Max. You're in capable hands today, guys. Unreal panel, and I'll let him kick off. Thank you.
Thanks, Sayed. Appreciate it. And of course, Sayed is our wonderful sales member at Hermes, and building the book, and we're definitely keeping busy. So it's always good to have a chat and talk about the SME space, and particularly distressed SMEs and how it works when it comes to capital structure, restructuring, and of course secondary market values and running the auction. So I think that at the moment brokers are talking or thinking about whether it is a good idea to restructure, refinance, or start selling down assets. Now, probably the first two is the most notable, but when it comes to selling down, that's always an option, but directors and business owners find it very hard to even sell things. They've got their baby HSV, or they've got a truck or a trailer or excavator that they've loved, but they just don't want to let it go. So we're just going to touch on how that all sort of permeates through the industry. And I guess starting off with you, Nick, from your perspective, why does structure matter more than speed sometimes when it comes to a restructure?
Structure matters more than speed. What money? Firstly, it's like, what is the role of money? Money doesn't solve problems. Money buys time to solve problems. And if you're going for fast money, and there's a lot of fast money around at the moment, it's very easy, and sometimes clients, they're not talking to their brokers, they're just jumping online and getting some of this easy, fast money. And fast money, as I said, the role of money is to buy time so that you can fix the business, grow the business, apply a strategy. Fast money will buy you days or weeks. Money that's properly structured might take a little bit longer to get into place, but it's going to buy you months or years to fix the business properly. And I think that is one of the issues when it comes to fast money versus properly structured money. People want. I've got a matter at the moment where, and this is inevitable, and people, whether or not you're in restructuring or in finance, you'll relate to this, where you speak to someone, they need some funding, and you speak to them, and they don't really like what you're saying to them, so they go away to see if they can find something better. And they come back a week later, and they've got a few questions about the proposal you gave them. Then they come back another week later, and all of a sudden now the money's needed by Friday, right? And so the thing is, and so then they start thinking, well, I'm going to have to get my hands on some fast money, and which is not structured properly. It's expensive. It tends to be daily repayments or whatever it might be that erodes the cash flow. And I think that like anything, it's better to get the right money that buys you months or years, as opposed to the easy fast money that's only going to buy you days or weeks.
I'm sure you, Marcus, have seen that.
Mate.
In the restructuring space. To start off with, when did you start, or what drew you in to restructuring?
Yeah, okay, that's an interesting one. Sort of found me, to be honest with you. I was restructuring without even actually knowing it. I didn't know what restructuring was, right? I've heard this word many, many times, restructuring. What on earth is it? And I sort of fell in this line of thing, this type of job. And I guess originally it wasn't meant to be a full-time sort of thing. It was just a pathway to find out exactly what I wanted to do. But what it allows me to do is to make the best out of a bad situation. You're given particular circumstance with limited resources, and coming back to Nick, where, they're saying they come to you once, they come to you twice, you're 2 weeks down the track. During that time, they've burnt so many resources, right, and they've limited their options, and then they come to you like, fix this, this is what I've got, fix it now. So, we have a look at it. People that think they've either got no hope or actually don't know what their options are, you come through, you go, right, we can do this, this, and this, and you get them back on their feet, and you, particularly those people that, through they're experiencing financial hardship through no fault of their own. The ability to give them an option and give them a second chance. So I guess that's why I like it and what has kept me in the game.
Yeah. So I guess when it comes to the lead up, everyone has expectations. Brokers, business owners think that asset values are a certain dollar amount. So I guess for you, Bruce, a broker's more often than not surprised about what the actual FLV or valuation comes out at.
I think if they're involved in the business early enough, they're probably not that surprised. We try and work with brokers where we can, but I think it's important that we get in early, because if we can get in early, we can have a look at the asset classes and potentially look at how can we unlock some equity. Is there equity in the assets? Can we reduce their monthly repayments, and therefore does that provide them with better cash flow, so that gives them more time to then continue, I guess, working on other things. And directors' valuations or written down values don't really correlate at all with what the asset value is or a market value at all. So,
but they also apply the intrinsic value to it too, right? Like their heart and soul.
Yeah,
They just don't want to know.
and things are parked up for that they might want to use tomorrow. They might want to use in 6 months. They're underutilised assets. At the end of the day,
That's a good point.
they should be moving them on, not parking them in the corner.
That's right, because the what if, that's not now.
And looking at contracts that aren't necessarily viable, that you're not making any money out of. Why keep sending that truck up and down the highway to Newcastle if there's no value?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just adding to your cost base.
Yep.
So I guess we're in a sort of higher for longer state of the economy. Everyone sort of, rates went up, everyone sort of thought that they were going to wane. They sort of didn't, then they sort of jumped back up just recently. Is that feeding into anything that you're seeing at the moment, Nick? Is it maybe better for a broker to sort of pause, take their time and consider a restructure? Do you think that they actually think about doing a restructure, or is it just the capital stacking, fintechs adding them all on board, and then you start getting into the Marcus territory or valuations?
Well, firstly, just to add a comment to what Bruce was saying, when people don't act early and cash is scarce, like as they're running out of cash, of course, the other thing that happens is they're not maintaining their transport properly.
Correct.
And then so something that might have been worth X, 2 months ago, had they taken some action 2 or 3 months ago, now hasn't been maintained properly. There's more wear and tear. Maybe the thing's broken down in a workshop, and it's the value of that's plummeted. When it comes to higher for longer, I could talk all day about interest rates and inflation, and people do not understand inflation. Inflation is caused by one thing, and it's government spending. Inflation is caused by government debt and government money printing to fund spending. So unless you see the government cut back on spending, and we're all guilty because we all want the government to do more for us. Everybody wants the free stuff, and I don't want you to get the free stuff, but don't you dare cut my free stuff. So as long as you see, when you're watching the budget, if you're seeing they're cutting costs, but at the same time they're just spending that cut money, it's inflationary. And if you then look at our real interest rate, which is the rate that you see printed minus inflation, and compare that to the rate in the USA minus inflation, and if you see that our real interest rate is lower than the US interest rate, the pressure is on the Aussie rates to go up. It's just a fact, right? Because as long as our real interest rates are too low, our dollar is going to crater, and as long as the dollar, they've got to push it up. So So that's why rates are going to be higher for longer. It's unless no one's got the appetite to cut spending, there's going to be inflation. We have to deal with it. So I think that as far as small business goes, you know, you've still got to get up in the morning and run your business. You know, so then it's a question of how you're structuring and then you get back to this. I think you mentioned capital stacking, for example, right? We get into the situation where we've got stacking of capital, and then you know we see, and I'm sure people in the room see, where it affects insolvency as well. When you're trying to restructure a business, and you got, what have I got to play with here? What buffer? What's the surplus of assets over liabilities? You must look at it all the time, every day.
Yeah.
And you go, well, there would have been a surplus over assets and liabilities, but they've got 5 working capital facilities.
Yeah.
Now, I would say to you, and Marcus, I'm interested to see what you think, I don't think you ever need more than 2.
Oh, mate.
Right, maybe 1. Now, but
New trouble.
yeah. So the third working, my belief is the third working capital facility is not working capital.
No.
It is what the old school bankers, 1 or 2 grey hairs, I won't point you out, David Harvey, but there's a few here that are old enough to remember when banks used to talk about over-trading and debt turning core. Remember they used to talk about overdrafts becoming core? Well, when you get that third, you know, wonder-cap facility, that's all that is. In the old days, that would have been the overdraft turning core, and it means that the problem's not being fixed. You're kicking the can down the road, making it harder for when it does land on your desk or a restructuring desk to actually fix the problem, because there's nothing to work with.
It's almost someone crying out, asking for the third person or whoever it is to come and take me. Like, I'm done. I'm like, can someone just do something, right? And Nick, you're on the ball, man. Like, in terms of the caps, right? You have 1 cap. There's a reason for it, and they do have a place.
Yeah.
Right. You've got a small cash flow shortage where it is. You've got a bit of a plans coming in. You get a second cap, and you sort of, this guy's a little cooked. A third cap, you're done.
Crack
but these
cocaine.
days, we are seeing literally 5 caps, and a new cap pops up, right? And when I refer to caps, you know, there are all these payday lenders with cap in it somewhere.
24-hour payday.
Yeah. It's there. It's done. You know, and the whole idea is that it's meant to be for a short period, for a short-term cash flow issue, not an ongoing solution, because you will run out of equity, it erodes your equity and whatever it is that you're securing again. It cripples you. I mean, these guys are paying daily interest. Daily
repayments.
Yeah. These daily repayments coming out. One default and you're cooked. Right? So
when I was in the insolvency space 6 years ago, you didn't really see too many of the caps. Maybe there was 1, and then you look at a contract and, you know, then you put down the file and, you know.
But anything you saw was at maybe 2 a.m. on television, right? Cash train, you know, probably those guys out there looking to smash the pokies, right? But now you go through, like, on social media and Meta and whatnot, and, you know, they're becoming more and more, out there and accessible. And it's also, there's a lot more, what I'm seeing, a lot of people from America coming over and seeing this opportunity. Like, well, these guys, this is unregulated. You know, you can do what you want. People are desperate. Let's get in there and try and make the most of it. So,
If some of this happening because of the lack of equity in asset base, so they're no longer able to refinance?
In my opinion, I think it's just a quick fix, right? People are so used to having their head in the sand, and they're like, you know what, like, if they don't have to address the problem because they know the underlying issues, a big thing, right? And it's going to take a lot of time. I don't have the time to do that. I've got to focus on this. So it's literally for me, it's the accessibility to that money, how easy it is to take place. And also too, I think it comes down to a lot of, the advice from advisors, from professionals, you know. Take that and don't worry about it. You know, get their commission and the job on, but they're not there when these people are really struggling at the end of the day with no solution.
I have to. This is only partly related, but I have to say, you said before people are looking for someone to save them, and I've got my old personal trainer. He's a real character. Now there's a shot of him. He was a Muay Thai boxer.
Wow.
And there's blood coming from his head, and there's the caption here: knowing no one is coming to save you, get up.
Yeah, exactly right. You ain't going to save yourself.
Yeah.
That's
yeah,
100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, it's good.
So, I mean, you probably see, Bruce, probably that difficulty with directors and business owners with speed. It's easy to get money, but it takes time to do evaluation. Is that a factor? Are directors, are people pressuring you to move faster, or is that a factor? Yeah.
We're getting asked, where we participate in people wanting to sell down their assets, we're getting asked to do some very large deals at the moment in a very short space of time, and people need the cash to be able to move on. They need they need to be able to sell down the assets, and if there is equity, be able to take that to, I guess, stop themselves going through the next step, which is some form of an appointment. And we recently had one where they actually put one of the entities into VA the day after we'd actually paid out all the financiers for them, and we were lucky enough to understand that was happening with the advisor. But for us and the conservative nature with the way we look at things, we don't particularly like that. We like to get the assets, we like to pay out the financiers, and we want to know that we've got 100% ownership going forward.
I feel sorry for the valuers a lot of the time, because you speak to funders and they're like, oh mate, we could do this in 6 hours, 24 hours, something like that. Just comes down to the valuer, right? When the valuer can do it, he's not available for 2 weeks. Is that them passing the buck? Is that genuine, that there is that much demand for your services? I mean, people don't understand the processes and the legalities behind the valuation, right?
We've probably got the largest valuation team, so we can move very quickly.
Okay.
But it's getting to the stage now where we're actually, first step is the desktop, and we're actually moving on the desktop and then starting to structure a deal together that's subject to us being able to get around and inspect the assets. If you look at larger transport and things like that, the assets are moving.
Yeah.
If you look at a hire business, they're out on hire. You can't get on the construction sites to see them. That takes weeks, and in some cases it takes months to be able to see 100% of the assets.
Absolutely.
So I guess you're trying to look at a percentage of the fleet in order to be able to give you confidence in the numbers that you're moving forward with, and then hoping that you're going to be able to get back around and see the balance of it at some point in time. But you are taking some risk on board as part of that.
Can I just take this opportunity to promote Marcus's podcast? You can tell he's a podcaster, and he loves asking the questions.
Thank you, Nick. I have a genuine interest, they pick up and...
But now I'm going to ask you a question.
Oh, you go.
If you don't mind, because I'm just interested by something. We're not trying to demarcate. But I wonder sometimes, Marcus, you're looking at a restructuring scenario. Now, Pickles, I've promoted your podcast. I'm just going to promote Pickles a little bit here as well. It is possible where you've got a surplus of assets. Obviously, restructuring in the form of VA is great, but sometimes people could just park the assets in Pickles, go for an EOI. It's there. I know myself. I'm comfortable because I know the assets are in Pickles' yard, going into a deal, for example.
Yeah.
I can lend more on those assets because I know I'm not going to have to chase them down. The client's got control.
Yep.
Are people doing much of that already? Bruce?
No, we're not seeing that. We're probably seeing more with some of the finances where they're chasing assets and wanting to repossess them, and they're actually ringing us, or they can actually also use our portal where they can type in the VIN number and they can actually see that asset is sitting on one of our sites. So they're using that now to try and find some of their assets. And then they'll talk to their client, and then mostly they'll then embargo those assets in some way, shape or form. And if the client can introduce a buyer that's greater than what our valuation is, well then they're able to transact, but most of the time they don't, and we end up selling the assets through normal course of sales.
Can I ask you a question?
Wow, this is great. Poor old Max. Now here he is.
This is great. Plant the seed and watch the tree grow.
So obviously you'd feel more comfort in the sense of lending more, and probably lending quicker in the sense that park it all up, put it in the Pickles yard.
Well, not all of it, but I have a term I call redlining.
Yeah.
Right now, redlining is when
Probably,
we'll go to an 80% LVR.
Yeah.
Right, but that's a maximum. And particularly in a distress scenario, you don't necessarily, there's nowhere to go if you're going all the way up to 80.
Yeah.
Right? But if you say, look, this thing, we're going to be redlining the LVRs, but they've identified a few assets they're going to sell down. Now, rather than that be a story, you know, we say, look, park those things, take them to Pickles. You've got control. It's not me. You say yes or no when the thing's being sold. But that way we can, I was saying, Sayed is a motorcycle rider. I don't know about yourself, but I am too. And, you know, the more you lean, the faster you can go around the corner. And I can just lean into that lend a little bit more if it's already there.
I like that a lot, and it makes sense. I mean, it's there. You don't have to have the collection costs.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about where they're at and finding them. As you say, they're everywhere around the country.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You'd know yourself.
Because they're selling down. It might be I've got 50
You can't find
items
half the stuff.
and 10 of these things aren't working.
Exactly.
And we need to restructure. We need to pay down some debt, but take the time, right?
But what about, maybe for another time, but what if they're relying on those assets?
Well, no, I'm talking about if they're downsizing.
You're downsizing, and
Because-
this has come down to the surplus
Yeah,
assets, right?
yeah,
You're sitting around doing
yeah,
nothing,
yeah.
park them there.
So
Exactly.
who convinces, though, the director to do that?
Well,
Whose role should it be?
Marcus.
Yeah.
He's the
Is
talker.
it-
It's probably coming down to him trusting the value too, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And if they're going into that scenario, it's to make the transaction move quicker. It's probably easier that we come in and pay a percentage of our valuation, and then offer to share the upside.
Yeah.
So we're not taking all the upside. So it's not a trade. We're just paying a percentage of it up front, and then as we sell the asset, we get over and above what we've seen
what
paid.
about-
We then pay 90% or 80% of that back to the client. So we're still getting the majority of the value out of that asset, but allows potentially you to move quicker.
I might be
That would be
taking
brilliant.
this away from you, Nick, but what about you offering to purchase that stuff off someone quickly like that?
That's what they do.
Yeah, that's what you were saying just then.
Yep. Yeah, once you get into probably 2, 3, 4, 5, up to $10 million, the transaction slows down just because of the paperwork and the contracts that are involved. But anything up to $1 million, we can pretty much transact that within 24 hours. So it can move pretty quickly.
So when it comes to numbers and then expectations management, how often, let's say a director comes to you and says, I've got a fleet here, it's worth $5 million.
Yeah.
Can you value it? How often does that number really stack up when you actually do the val? Is it above, below?
There's some people in the transport industry that have probably been in it all their life, and they've taken over the business from their father, and they've probably got a pretty good understanding as to what their fleet's worth. You know, they've traded the assets along the way, bought and sold a bit of second-hand equipment, they keep an eye on it. So they're probably going to be pretty close, but on the whole, if we were, you know, there's $5 million worth of business there, 9 times out of 10 when we get there, there's probably 3, maybe 3.5 if we're lucky.
And do you speak to brokers directly? Do you know is there a surprise? What's the emotion around that?
The surprise is probably more, well, here's my written down value, or here's my director's value, and they don't really correlate to where the market is. And at the moment, you've probably still got some people that are living back in the COVID bubble where everything was worth a fortune. Everything had equity in it. Every time there was an insolvency matter, there were no assets being disclaimed because they all had equity.
It's crazy, isn't it?
So now there's an insolvency matter, and every single asset's disclaimed because it no longer has any equity because the market's moved back to where it should have been. But the problem we've got now is everyone paid up here for their assets, or they refinanced through that time, and therefore they've sucked the equity out because they've revalued those assets and gone again. So that's making it. It's making it quite hard to help people try and restructure because there isn't any equity left unless they've got some assets that are totally unencumbered.
It's no coincidence we're referring to trucks and transport.
Mate.
It's every day.
Yeah.
It's and Bruce, they're only lending against in some instances, from what I've heard. But I'm not a truckie, but certain types of trucks. There's a Western Star or something they won't touch, but if it's a Scania, you're getting a little bit more. This is what I've heard.
I think it's the other way around, isn't it? The American trucks.
Yeah.
Americans.
One or the other.
Yeah, there's new entrants into the Australian market at the moment coming out of China, which are very cheap, and they're starting to make their way into some of the Main Street fleet. So that's going to be quite interesting. if you look at a prime mover today, if you go and buy Kenworth, Volvo, it's pretty much $500,000 for a prime mover. Like that's very expensive. And if you look at pre-COVID, it was probably $350,000 for that same truck. So new price has gone up significantly. So that's helped because that's just dragging up the second-hand values behind it at the moment.
But you get something like that, you'd want a contract driving to the moon, right, to kind of service that.
In most cases, yeah.
And when it comes to doing vals, how much does the interest rate or those expectations of the rate feed into that beautiful number that you're looking for at the end, or the director's looking for? How do you assess that?
We're not really assessing where the interest rates is, and that has some time, I guess, before it really has a impact on the market. We're more looking at where consumer sentiment sits at the time, and obviously interest rates do have an impact on that. But it's if you're looking at line haul transport, it's looking at what's coming in through the ports, because at the end of the day, line haul transport's about moving parcels pretty much. So if we've got less coming into the country, well, there's obviously going to be less parcel movements, and therefore we're going to have a softer market when it comes to line haul equipment. But outside that, the rest of the market's pretty good. And the late model, low kilometre assets are still holding their value right up. It's just when you fall away and you get to that 7 to 10 years and then beyond, that value certainly drops out of it.
Do you have anything to add on?
Nothing
what you're
further.
seeing?
No. Look, I think in terms of asset valuations.
Yeah, valuations, and especially just how there's I guess flack from brokers and whatnot when they come in under.
Look, the brokers are usually just taking, they're intermediating. Clients telling them what they think the assets are worth.
Absolutely.
The broker's not really a valuer. I mean, sometimes they've got a lot of experience in a particular industry vertical, transport, manufacturing, whatever it might be. But the client's giving them this, telling them exactly why it should be worth what it is. It's interesting what Bruce says. I don't think it's one of the fallacies. I don't think it's sunk cost fallacy, but it's one of those fallacies that just because you paid this much for it and you've spent that much on it doesn't mean it's worth it's what it's worth. It's worth what the market's going to pay, and the market doesn't care what you paid for it.
Nick, do you get heaps of people calling you going, mate, this is crap? Really look at it, get a new valuer.
Look, we did usually on the property side, you'll get people more so than on the equipment side. On the property side, but then with property, and I guess it probably applies to equipment as well. It's always a matter of, well, our valuers they will budge, but you've got to tell them what's the recent sale in that street or around the corner that the valuer didn't pick up that proves it's worth more. I guess in the case of equipment, it might be there was an auction last week and the trucks got triple what they said they were. Well, unless you've got that, unless you can prove, because that's what it's all about, is market evidence. So sometimes we'll get the broker or the client on the phone saying, listen, this thing's worth double that. Have you got some evidence? Yes. Okay, if there's evidence, the valuer is all ears. They might be a bit embarrassed that they missed it. Usually, though, the evidence isn't there.
We find most of the time if people are coming back and they're not happy with the valuation, it's generally because they haven't told us everything. It might be a bit of mining equipment we don't have the component hours, or it might be a truck and we don't realise that the engine's been rebuilt or certain things have happened to it. So it's about getting all the information.
Got a boat? Oh, you didn't tell us about that.
Well, information's everything. I mean, I'm looking at a scenario right now. I'd say, I asked for the listing. It's worth $16 million. All these different items. There's one item that's worth 10 mil, and it has, one word and a 6,000 behind it. And we send it off to a valuer, and I would think, if it's worth 10 million, someone might think it's a specialised asset. The valuer might know, but information's everything. You want to know, serial number. You want to know hours. How much or how often do you see you asking for information? Is it easier today, or are you still looking?
No, you're still looking, and it's all the time. You want to understand maintenance history because that obviously affects the value significantly as well. Sometimes it takes 2 or 3 requests before you start getting the information out of them, and they start giving it to you because they realise the value's not going to stack up to where they think or might be. So they start furnishing you with more information.
I guess in terms of maintenance history, just so that everyone can appreciate how much in depth valuers actually go, when you got the boys that go out on site and they open the glove box, they're going through that book, or they're trying to see what the trail is.
If it's a motor vehicle, yes, I'll have a look at logbook in it. A lot of the European ones you've got to actually go through BMW or Mercedes-Benz because they're electronic these days. But if you're out on site and it's a mining contractor, well, you normally pull all the information out of their computer systems, which will tell you what's going on there. You can see a lot of information normally on various whiteboards in the workshops, and walking around the workshop normally gives you a pretty good indication as to the level of pain that the business might be in, because if it's good, it's clean, and you can see that it's going through, you know that you're looking at a business that's travelling pretty well. If it's untidy, it's got crap everywhere, it looks very unorganised, you normally find that that's because they're in a fair bit of pain. They're doing not preventative maintenance, but they're doing breakdown maintenance. So as soon as it's breaking down, they're having to fix it, and that normally suggests that the pure maintenance isn't being conducted, and therefore the asset value is coming down.
How do you put that in the val? Like, this is struggle street, you know what I mean?
We don't suggest that it's struggle street, but we'll put some commentary in around what we've seen from that point of view. So it's important to get to the workshops and not just the assets.
Yeah, cool.
So speaking of struggle street, when it's decision time and there's distress, for you, Nick, when does refinancing preserve equity and when does it quietly erode it?
Okay, so preserving equity, how do we define equity, the drivers of equity? There's two drivers of equity. One is enterprise value, and one is assets minus liabilities. So when you're looking at enterprise value, is the funding going to help build enterprise value? Enterprise value is a function of future maintainable earnings. How is this funding going to assist with future maintaining earnings? Now, if it's providing runway so that a business strategy can be executed, as we say, whether it's downsizing the fleet, taking on new contracts. Taking on new contracts is a big thing, particularly in construction and civils and mining services, where Hermes loves to play. You need to have that working capital runway so you can, mobilise or buy a new machine or whatever it is to address whatever it is in the business that is causing you to lose money and not generate enough working capital. So the funding that means that the funding needs to match cash flows. It needs to be realistic. Sometimes we structure deals where, we're providing a 3-month or 6-month payment holiday in order for cash flow to build up. Other times, if you're understanding, particularly when it comes down to selling down assets, we try and structure things accordingly. So, and I said before, if the wrong funding, if it's the quick, easy money, it's not providing that runway into the longer term. It's only providing runway for this week. To make, to stop the harassment this week. Now the other thing is, the other definition of equity is assets minus liabilities. And one of the phenomena that we're seeing is pass the parcel, where a client is being handed from one lender to the next lender to the next lender. The assets are being refinanced time and time again, and you must see this, by the time it lands on your desk. And there was equity, and then went to the wrong lender, short term, whatever, and some of that equity's gone, and then it's gone to the next lender, and more of the equity's gone, and no value has been extracted. The money that's being raised, when you look at those, say 2 or 3 iterations of refinance, a lot of the money hasn't gone into fixing the business. It's just gone into transaction costs. One of my finance lecturers used to say, the more you cut up the cake, the more sticks to the knife.
Yeah.
And there's a hell of a lot sticking to the knife.
Yeah, there is.
And then when it comes to your assessment of, when does it become a situation where a business is realistically restructurable versus just delaying the inevitable with more debt?
Yeah. But just touching on what Nick was saying, mate, like, it comes down to the strategy. Like, what is your plan to change? Like, this can't continue.
Yeah.
right? You can't just grab the oh, I need refinancing, but mate, I'm not going to get you some cash if I'm just going to see you down the street in 2 weeks' time in exactly the same position.
Yeah.
Right, so there has to be a plan, and the plan can't be, I've got to feel it in my guts that I'm going to win Lotto next week. Right? It's just, some of the things you hear is just outrageous. And, you know, you need to have a plan that, I think that you said, it's got to be, you said winning a new contract is a good strategy because it is possible, and then you're going to start increasing the revenue and the profit margin and whatnot. So being in a position to A, accept it, B, putting forward a plan that is reasonable, achievable and sustainable, then I feel, and something that someone who is specialised and experienced, like our good selves, can understand and can see. I think that is a position when probably restructuring is an option, but simply like, and touching on what Nick was saying, mate, like it's heartbreaking to see people who are in their 70s and 80s and have refinanced and refinanced and refinanced, and their house that they're living in is, you know, has no equity at all. It's just as a result of covering the cost for the business that is hemorrhaging cash, they've not been able to identify the reasons why.
Yeah.
And they've been dependent on, they think just because they're able to get cash, everything's sweet, right? And when I come across these situations, I'm like, who is your accountant? This has been going for 3 or 4 years. Like, how has someone not told you to just stop, draw the line, identify the problem, put in a restructure. If you can't restructure, mate, preserve what you have in your personal capacity and what you've earned, and start again.
Very true.
You know, I'm starting to see a hell of a lot of that, and it's really sad. You know, particularly when people they're good old Aussie battlers have worked all their life, and they're literally about to retire with nothing.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
We see that regularly, don't we, Stuart? Like people put in their holiday home as well as their house. So
Yeah.
literally, when it all falls over, they've got nothing.
Right,
Well, it's a question of, you know, what's the business model? Well, I always like to ask, what are you trying to achieve? You know, where are you trying to get to? And it's a very basic question, but it's a great question. And the other thing is, what's the business model? Is the business model selling stuff for more than it costs so you make money? Or is the business model just refinancing? You know, how does the business generate cash?
Yeah.
Does it generate cash by trading at a profit or by refinancing? And that's you know, that's what it's got to be.
Yeah, 100%. And I find a lot of these old-timers who are coming in, they're in industries that are being either replaced or offshored, right? So like a lot of manufacturing and whatnot, where they were killing it in the 70s and the 80s and they were the man, but you know, they've created all this personal wealth as a result of their business, but they're now got to the point where, mate, read the writing in the room, like read what's the elephant in the room. Everyone's over in China now. You can't produce it for the same cost that you used to. And one thing's going to go, it's your personal wealth. But what happens is it starts with the tax. They just refuse. They don't pay the tax. They don't know about the tax. So when I go and see them, I go, you guys, oh mate, we make profit. We make 10 grand a week. All right, let's have a look at your cash flows. Mate, you're missing a couple of things here. Super. GST.
Wow.
Mate, you're not making any money at all. I see you closing me down. Well, what option do I have? Are you going to fund it?
Wow.
You already have. I'm not putting my own house on the line. You know, sometimes have those frank discussions.
And I guess in terms of expectations management, there's a perceived value of P&E pre-appointment, and then there's one post-appointment. How much does that differ?
It really, that probably depends on the circumstances at the time, I guess. The timing of that pre-appointment compared to the post-appointment. You know, was it a desktop with a lack of information, therefore it was more of a sense check as opposed to evaluation? Was it the pre-appointment in November and we're now trying to sell the assets in February? Obviously everything's through that's it's another year older. Is it fridge equipment? You know, did we value it in summer and now we're being asked to sell it in winter? Obviously the value changes from that point of view because less demand. Is it ag equipment and it's outside season compared to when the valuation was done? So all those things affect pre-appointment versus post-appointment, but if it's something that's valued in 30 to 60 days, there's no reason why that value should change. The number is the number. In many cases, once you get to the appointment, if the assets are sold in their own environment and they're marketed correctly, they should actually potentially get more money, because once there's a reason for sale, which is what the buyers want, and there's a little bit of blood in the water, so to speak, people come in there thinking that they're going to buy something cheap, and we're just creating more intensity, more competition, which at the end of the day should drive a better return compared to your pre-appointment valuation.
So the psychology behind the auction as well.
The psychology behind the auction, and we look at some appointments where the practitioner will sell 70% of the assets and then we'll be given 30%. But when in selling the 70%, we haven't analyse what effect it might have on the 30% that's left, which is probably going to deteriorate the 30% depending on what they are, because they're probably the less in demand assets. So it's going to erode that 30% by 50%, but we haven't actually calculated that in the reasoning behind why we sold the 70%. Right. And if you can keep the whole asset base together, and that includes all the financiers trying to avoid people taking assets and handing it to one auctioneer versus the other. You can keep it all together, keep it all on the same site in its own environment. 90% of the time, that's going to be your best outcome, and you're probably going to get more than the pre-appointment valuation.
What about a big fleet? Let's go back to trucks, and you've got 50 or 60 of them, and you've got to run on the flooding of the market, right? How do you take that into consideration?
Yeah,
do you stage it?
If it's 50 or 60 trucks, that's not a big fleet. We do an auction at the moment and put 300 trailers up and maybe 100 prime movers in the one sale. We'll probably do the prime movers in a separate online sale and then the trailers, and that'll move through quite quickly. We've done some events where there's been 750 trailers and 150, 200 trucks, and right around the country, and we've been able to move that within a sequence. You've got to remember, if you take a big fleet out of the marketplace, you're also leaving a hole. And with some of the strategies that we've done in the past, where we've actually retailed some of the assets prior to an auction back into the buyer base that's now picking up the contracts, because whoever's picking up the contracts 90% of the time will not have sufficient fleet to be able to go in there and fulfill that hole that's been left behind the next day. So it's capitalising on that and getting as much money out of that as we can, and then selling down the balance of the assets. And you'd be surprised how and we even debated ourselves internally, is this fleet too big to be absorbed in this short amount of time? But generally you find out 90% of the time we're able to move it back into the marketplace in a timely manner.
You might say this, I don't know, but it comes to me sometimes and they're like, mate, I've got a buyer, so it doesn't need to go to auction. Why are you going to auction? You're just devaluing it. And what is the answer to that, Nick? Why do you have to go to auction? Why do liquidators have to
Look, I in that situation, I try and have the conversation that I said before about, look, get it in the yard. You control it. You'll see all the advertising, but at least we get to sleep at night knowing that it's in the yard. We can support the business so that we can support its growth strategy into the future that doesn't include those particular assets. But as you know, people, we've got a client. He's not a distressed client, but forever has a buyer. I'm thinking the guys up in Queensland, and they've always got buyers for their assets, and they're selling them through the old magazines and a trade. I don't know what they the trucks.
The Book of Dreams.
The Book of Dreams.
And they come in with a hat and a moustache and glasses.
Now, sometimes they do get these assets away, but why buy from the Book of Dreams if you can buy from? You can see the stuff on auction. It doesn't make any sense.
There's more
and you're
exposure
testing the
as well.
market. Yeah. It's evidence that you've tried to do your best result, right?
Yeah.
So when it comes to strategic decisions now, what separates a good restructured scenario versus one that keeps getting repriced, declined by credit at the late stage? How do you assess that? What do you see?
I'm going to say, try and watch the eye roll on Sayed here as I say the answer to this question. I mean, to put together a good submission that's going to get bought, you need to ask two sets of questions. The first set of questions is what I like to call Rudyard Kipling sticks on a serving men. There it goes. Are you familiar with this one? I have 6 honest serving men. They taught me all I knew. Their names are what and where and when and why and how and who. And if you ask all of those questions going into any scenario, I don't care where you are, those questions will get the story. You cannot not have the full story if you've asked all those questions. It's impossible to fail if you've asked all those questions. The other thing is, when you've put the submission together, you know, and again, now Catherine's eyes will roll, before you submit it, ask ChatGPT what questions is the lender likely to have. And it'll come up with about 5 stupid questions, but it'll come up with another 5 really good questions that now you can answer and put them into your submission. And you know, it might have been something you hadn't anticipated. I have to say, we're working on a very large deal. I mentioned it to you earlier. It's a $25 million deal. It's quite large for us. But, you know, we've put in a finance proposal and they're using a consulting firm. You know, it's not a national consulting firm. And they've come back with all these questions. And I reckon that's what they've done, the get ChatGPT to find some questions, and I'm answering these. But they've left out the 5 good ones. They've just sent me the 5 inane questions. And I thought, if this is all you've got, okay. I would have been asking about the pricing and some of the costs. Yeah. None of that. It was just all this weird stuff that you could tell. But as I say, prepare your permit. Ask all the, you know, put all the 6 honest serving men to use, and feed it through ChatGPT, and you'll have a killer proposal that's answered all the questions. And it might identify some of the other things, the strategic things that need to be fixed in the business, that you can then discuss with the client and tell the lender, these are the things we're going to fix.
Is technology making it easier to get finance? I know it's another question for another day, right? But
it's got to be.
Well, look, it goes both ways. Yeah,
it does.
It's interesting. It's interesting.
So, Marcus, what's the biggest mistake you see advisors make that unintentionally erodes equity?
Mate, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but it's throwing people into short-term facilities, short-term options, you know, and not actually addressing the true, I guess, underlying issue for the hemorrhage of cash. I don't know, we'll just plug it with that, but it's only good for a month, 2 months, whatever it is. So every time they go and refinance, you know, replace the old new debt with old debt, or old with new, they're needing more and more and more and more, which means they're eating into the equity of the house, as opposed to meeting the problem head on, identifying the leakage, and when then, like, drawing the line in the sand. I keep saying that, so I'm not thinking Sam and the boys at Win, they hear me say that probably 3 or 4 times a day. Right, draw the line in the sand, work out what your problem is, and then have that money work for you to kick us, to you know, to improve the business, rather than using it just to keep it alive.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
That's honestly, that's, in answer to your question, is that short-term fix.
Yeah. And do you think it's a matter of education? It's making sure the director, maybe the broker, is it a combination?
But the stigma, like, people go, oh no, I can't restructure, that's the end. I'm never going to be able to get finance again. That means I'm bankrupt. Well, no, mate, you're trying to go through a process where you negotiate the terms of your trade, you know, to match your current circumstances, right? It's usually by negotiation with creditors. They're not going to like it, right? But you're going to get as much back as possible given the circumstances, and maintain that client moving forward. So yeah, it's education, it's getting the point across, it's sharing success stories, and it's trying to paint the picture of a different future, not demise.
Well, that's the thing, when you refinance, you want to be able to put that money to work,
100%.
Not to
keep it in
just to keep that thing at bay. You know, someone's knocking. You want it to solve 2 problems. You want to stop the guy from knocking on your door, and you also want to make more money out of it.
That's right.
And that's just sound restructuring.
100%. So your first one, the first cap, you're like playing water polo. You're treading water. Your second cap, you've gone down a little bit. Your third one, you're sliding. Your fifth, you're on the bottom. Right. So it's those short-term fixes. They're just really problematic, and you know, there's going to be there's going to be circumstances, honestly, where I feel that some advisors are going to say, mate, you put them into this facility. You actually were an accomplice to an insolvency event. Yeah.
Wow.
If they actually didn't take that, there was other options. If they didn't take that, they would actually not be in this position. So making some people accountable too, which I think we'll see a lot of moving forward.
Yeah.
Right? And make them really think, hey, I can't just go for the quick fix. I'm going to have to use my brain here.
Yeah, yeah. And so in terms of, you know, options, what conditions, Bruce, best maximizes the value? Is it the strategy? Is it the timing? Could be a combination. So what is that sort of scenario when, you know, you've sort of crossed the line and, you know, you've really just deteriorated your position? Is there sort of that line in the sand that people draw, or that you can conceptually sort of mention?
I guess, yeah, it's you can't control. You can control when the assets go to sale, but it comes down to what can we spend on the asset that's actually going to increase our money. If we can spend $10,000 on an asset and get $20,000 better return, well, it's worth spending that money. So do some rectification, put some things back together. I guess we've bought some businesses in the past out of insolvency, and we've gone ahead and actually employed the fitters, etc., put a lot of that plant and equipment back together. It might be over Christmas or something like that, and then sold it in the new year. But we've actually had it all running again, so we're adding a lot of value back into those assets. It's a lot around, you know, presentation and time to sale. Now we can look at a forced liquidation process where we're moving very quickly because rent's going to cost us too much money. If we've got to pick it up and move it back to a Pickles or auctioneer's premises, it's going to cost too much money. So we've got to do it a tighter window. Well, everybody needs to, and we would explain it, you know, it's going to erode your value because of what we're doing here, or we're giving you a strategy and a plan over a 6-week period as to how you're going to maximise your returns. And at times, you know, as part of that, we'll guarantee the return back to our clients, so that, you know, you can sit there and pretty much bank that this is going to be the minimum you're going to get out of that asset class and that event sale, so that you can keep talking to your client moving forward.
Yeah. You always want to keep talking to. You don't want to lose a client, right?
No.
So you want to make sure that they survive, and that you know goes across the panel here. And I guess when it comes to, you know, just looking for a bit of honesty here, when the SME is more SME equity destroyed by brokers waiting too long to restructure, you know, getting into that sort of quick cash. It's better to refinance early. What do you see? Are brokers actually helping, or are they adding to the problem?
I think that it's not the broker, it's the client, right? The client is always kicking the can down the road, and the brokers get as frustrated as we do. It's then, there's a couple of things. So then you say, well, what can the broker do to, because the most boring answer of all, and we've all said it here on the panel today, is early intervention. It's boring. It's like your mother telling you to put a jumper on, you know. But it's boring. It's true, right? So then what does a finance broker want? You want long-term repeat clients that give you referrals, right? That's what we want. So how can we see this thing that could be, you know, it's a dicey situation that going, how do I look into the future and see this as a long-term repeat client? I need, now what, something that because again, I'm a little bit older, I get to say to people, I can see the future. I can see the future. I know how your story ends because I've seen it time and again. So please learn from when I tell you, if you keep kicking this down the road, you know, here's what's going to happen. You're going to erode the equity in your house. You're going to end up insolvency advice shopping. You know, you might go to Marcus and he tells you the way it has to be. You don't like that. I don't like the sound of that. And you'll end up going to someone who tells you what they want to hear. And guess what? You get the wrong answer, the wrong result, and you've lost everything. So look, I want to, you know, however, I know that if we get in early, fix what I can, you know, fix it now. And there might be a little bit of pain now, but you know, we want to get you into happy days. I always say to people, a win for Hermes is when we get refinanced by a bank. if we get refinanced by a bank, we hate losing clients, right? But if you've gone from Hermes to the CBA, NAB, Judo, you know, someone who's an actual bank with a banking license, that's a win, because you've obviously, you know, we've had the privilege of being there while, you know, providing you the capital to repair your business, to get you to the stage where you tick all those impossible bank boxes. And that's like, that is fantastic.
You're right. It makes you feel good.
That is a win. You know, we always say, you know, please give us some referrals, because we've got some money we now need to redeploy. But that's a winning situation for us. And it's a win for the broker as well, because they, you know, the broker's got the client for 10, 20 years. You know, that's what they want.
And it's like a V at a docker. You know, you finally give control back to the director, and off they go.
That's right. Particularly if they start kicking goals again, right?
Absolutely.
If they haven't learned from their mistakes, you're like, oh, geez, I might, you know, it's a different company and do a better. Mate, seriously? Like, pay tax. Like, yeah, stop, you know, like, so yeah, absolutely, the success story. Particularly SBRs, particularly early on, where you could put forward some real achievable kind of returns, cents on the dollar. It doesn't have to be silly money.
Yeah.
And, you know, you're preserving jobs. Yeah, and particularly the ones who, I think I mentioned this before, at no fault of their own, someone got sick. You know, I had one guy who, he had cancer, he had like a small little landscape business, couldn't jump on the tools, obviously with that as well, you know, the compliance and whatnot fell to the side.
Yeah.
But came back on top, came to us, SPR'd it, put in a proposal that was going to work. The young fellas that worked for him kept their job, and you've got a really well-paying taxpayer who's well structured, who's learned from, well, not necessarily a mistake, but knows how it works, and going forward is going to be able to stand on their feet. So they're great. I love those stories.
And I mean, when you even do an SBR, it's, you know, history and sort of the background and story means a lot. You go to the ATO and you say, this is generally what's happened.
Well, I mean, I don't want to sound too critical, but you're literally dealing with people that kick boxes,
Wow.
right? And, you know, they haven't necessarily have the experience or education that perhaps
the emotional intelligence.
Oh, but sometimes it's a power trip. You could, like, comes across, you're like, mate, you've rejected this on the basis that there's a direct loan. There's no direct loan. Well, okay. They missed a couple of bases there, so it's poor compliance. Well, you can't change like that. So, you know, you're right. You've got to go above and beyond to really tell the story. It has to be genuine, it has to be authentic, but more importantly, there needs to be a solution in place that's going to prevent it from happening again, right? And you've actually, it's not just going to say, it's my accountant's fault, he didn't lodge and I didn't know about this. If you're going to say that, you need to actually have in your proposal, perhaps before you sign off on that you've got a new accountant in place, you know, and yeah, so.
So just wanted to open the floor, 20 questions. There was a lot of things and points sort of raised, so if anyone wanted to tack on and join the panel with any questions, please, the floor is yours.
I'll jump in on just assets in your yard. You know, we've got a situation where we've got some scaffolding equipment, which is quite hard to sometimes locate at various locations. And this is in the tens of millions of dollars worth of scaffolding equipment. And I'm just trying to think about what's the best way of trying to ideally locate it and, I guess, get it into a yard or get it somewhere. It's the case with the directors want overseas, which doesn't help either.
That amount of scaffold would be many, many tonnes. So, you know, we'd need to look at where potentially, if it's a smaller quantity, we could certainly take it in one of our yards, but we might need to have a discussion about, you know, where we can house it for you. As a, you know, to find it, potentially you're going to need company records, because everybody knocks off everybody else's scaffold and everybody paints it a different colour. So it becomes, without those sort of records and what sites it's on, it becomes very, very hard to locate it. But yeah, we can interview people and I guess staff out of a business in order to try and find where the last locations were, and then try and identify where possible. You can get data dots on some of the, people use that for some of the scaffolds, so you can put a light over it and then a magnifying glass and be able to identify but if it's been dipped in paint by somebody else 3 or 4 times, well, data dot's no longer there.
Yeah,
It's buried
or it's
under
been-
paint.
yeah.
It's one of those difficult industries to be able to take security over the scaffold. And
Particularly your
locate
motorcycle gangs that love the stuff as well. I mean, it's interesting because scaffolding, people say, oh, can you lend against the scaffolding? It's worth 10 million bucks. And you go, yeah, it's worth 10 million bucks in Pickles' yard.
Yeah.
It's a little bit like pallet racking. It's great. You know, I've had valuers and auction, oh, we love pallet racking. Yeah, when it's in your yard, it's great.
Yeah.
Getting it to the yard, that's the hard part.
pallet racking is dismantling. It's the cost of removing it and making
Yeah.
good with all the little holes that are sitting in the concrete these days outweighs the value of
Yeah.
the scaffold.
But
Most people
scaffolding,
leave
yes.
scaffold behind in significant warehousing because it's just not worth the cost.
Yeah, and you find as well as you know too, right? As soon as someone, so a little bit of money from a builder, bit of scaffolding goes missing, right? It's the first thing to go. So, well, you know, you think there's a couple of 100,000 worth of scaffolding there. You got sticks and bamboo holding it up.
Alrighty, I think we'll just wrap it up there. Thank you very much, Nick, Bruce, Marcus, for your time and your insights. Really appreciate it, and to the audience as well, thank you very much for coming. And yeah, appreciate it, and I'm happy to have a chat when we're heading off.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
And thank you guys, and always a pleasure to work with, and with Hermes as well, guys. There is, honestly, I don't think there's one situation that I haven't put to them that they didn't understand. A pressure test and work outside the square. So, yeah, thank you for your help. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you.
And yeah, keep doing God's work.